My name is Kiran Mai. I represent SMI PhD program, Srishti Manipal Institute of Art, Design and Technology. This auditorium scares us, so we feel quite out of place, but somehow I'm mustering all the strength that I can. It's such a nice occasion, and thank you really for, we are very proud. It's such an occasion that one of our colleagues, Mamta Sagar, has won a very prestigious award internationally, and we have requested her to share her experiences. And as part of course, we're making it part of PhD program, but it applies to everybody, and we're very happy that we find people from across all the disciplines and levels of SMI's programs. And so, welcome you all. And I mean, Mamta is a renowned poet and translator who's been doing fantastic work from Kannada to English and English to Kannada. And it's such a well-deserving occasion and, I mean, award. So we also, as a part of the, I mean, I think today she will be talking about performance, practice, her own process of writing, and how she brings that into an academic space, especially in doctoral studies space as well. This award actually reiterates, I suppose, her commitment to such, you know, her engagement with practice, engagement with performance, engagement with the theoretical understandings and her own political stance. So I really look forward to the talk, but I request before that Dr. Arindam Das to say a few words on this occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kiran Bhai, and thank you, dear colleagues from Maya Bangalore. It's not an easy task to introduce somebody who's already well known. Mamta Sagar, you're well known not only as a great poet and writer, translator, but also as a fantastic teacher. So I will not step into a domain introduction, which I think Kiran Bhai has done for some time. I'd like to put together the Mamta I've known over the last 1 year. Somebody who's passionate, and you should see, if you haven't seen her, you should see when she recites her poetry. When I had the chance to witness that during interim, and I literally thought she would fly off the floor. That was the passion with which she recited. That's the same passion she comes in when she comes into my room and discusses, Arindam, we have to discuss it now, right? And she can write an entire poem or a small book on a passage to Nigeria, where she was felicitated as the gold medal for the Writers of the World Award, right from what it took to the visa to the air ticket. Remember, Mamta? She was almost sent to another country. Thankfully, she looked at the ticket and she alerted the travel agent. It's a long story. That itself could be a good poem. So, and a fantastic human being, Mamta, and I feel so nice whenever you come to my room, because whatever you talk straight and you talk with passion. And today we believe that you will share with us some of your beliefs, which will enlighten us even more. Thank you so much and welcome. Over to you.
This dais goes like this, so even if I stand here, people can see me. I'll not go there. Getting this award was really a surprise that came to me. And before I begin, I would like to thank Dr.
See, it may sound a little cliche, but one significance of this award, that Mamta was invited by no less by Honorable CM, Mr. Siddaramaiah himself, to his residence, carving out time and talking with her, discussing with her, and asking about her works. That itself calls for a big round of applause.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran Mai, Dr. Anvisha Das for pulling me into this, and Dr. Arindam Das for such lovely words and bringing all of us into an AC room. We desperately need this. Otherwise, words will just melt and go away. You won't be able to talk about it. It was like some 10 months ago, I think, I received an email asking me to apply for this award. And 101 things come like that, so I had not checked the mail. And they went on sending me, and then by the end of it, they said, please, in the subject, please reply. Then I looked and they said that only 10 writers from all over the world are invited to apply for this award, and I have to apply. So the criteria that also said that you should have at least 3 major renowned reviews, internationally renowned reviews, either in English or Spanish or Russian or Arabic and some other language. So I wrote back to them saying this, I don't qualify for this criteria. Not just me, and many, many writers like me from many countries like ours will not qualify because I don't write in English. As a principle, I write only in Kannada. All my creative writing happens in Kannada, and therefore there are no reviews, internationally renowned reviews. So instead of telling you that I would be disqualified, I want to say that I disqualify this and I don't want to apply. So within a week they got back to me, and they had searched 2 interviews of me online and sent that and said that we already have 2 interviews. You can select 1 more and send us 3 interviews, and that's more than enough. After that, in and out, many meetings happened and a lot of things, and then SMI Mahe helped me travel. Initially, they were sending me to Seychelles somewhere. Then somehow I realized and I reached Nigeria. It was beautiful. And after getting the award, when Kiranmai and Anvesha asked me to talk about this whole thing, I also said that I would want to talk about my practice as such, along with sharing these experiences. And also I want to also share why I write and what do I write. So that's how this talk has happened. After I got back, it is so nice that our Honorable Chief Minister's office called me and asked me whether I can go for breakfast to his house. And it was an honor. When I went there, I just thought that because of the award, he has just invited me, and it's a protocol, and I just went. But after I went, I realized it's not just that. You know, because he looked at me and he suddenly said, I'm so happy that you got this award, because I remember the song that you wrote for your friend Gauri Lankesh when she was assassinated. He remembered that. He said the lines of the songs. And then he also said that, Fayaz Ahmed Fayaz would not have gone viral in Kannada without you. During CAA, I had done the translation, and the Tamil translation was based on my Kannada translation. So he knew what I was doing, you know. He knew why, like he felt very proud that I got the award. And that made me really, really happy. And so in Nigeria, actually, we were put up at a place called Association of Nigerian Authors, built on a land gifted to Chinua Achebe to develop the biggest writers' residency in Africa. It's a beautiful space, but all of us were in there, and 50 young Nigerian writers from 20s till the 30s, you know, were invited as volunteers with us. All 50 of them and the writers who went there, we were inside ANA. And there were gunmen outside protecting us, you know. So Ramzan was going on, and there are both Muslims and Christians together in Nigeria. And it was a beautiful experience. And receiving the prestigious World Organization of Writers Award for the contribution to the world literature not only came as a surprise, but also set me think about why do we write and how the whole recognition of writing surfaces. This also, after Siddaramaiah invited me, I started thinking that what is happening, Now I think I'll start reading whatever I have written. Memory and amnesia are two subtly functioning elements that control our lives. What we forget or made to forget or what we remember or expected to remember is what I'm interested in. The politics of forgetting in turn leads to the politics of remembering. This game of memory and amnesia make and mar reputations in a given cultural space. I'm trying to understand what it means by reputation. Reputation is associated with status, position, acquiring power, or getting at least close to the power. It is in association with good and bad reputations that one grows up with, either by representing it or contesting it, depending on the locations allotted to us. My mother was the first lady doctor, gynecologist for Shimoga district. And I grew up in a place called Sagara. That is part of my name now. And patients from really far and wide traveled to her. They used to come in bullock carts, and though we were only 3 of us in the house, cooking was made for some 20 people, and babies were given like milk, and it was kind of like I grew up in a huge family. Everybody was family. And they used to bring things, fruits, this, that, and sugarcane juice to our house, to give it to Amma. And I was pampered by everyone, and I thoroughly enjoyed all that. Amma always insisted that I do well in my studies. She was a little worried because she was a very busy doctor, and sometimes I wouldn't meet her at all. So one day I wouldn't meet her. So Sundays were the tough days for me because Sunday morning she would prepare question papers. Maths question papers, science question papers. I have to solve it, complete it, and then go to play, And I hated her for that. And, it was terrible. One day, I said, I don't want to do this. I tore the question paper. She put me in the attire, closed the door, and said, finish the work. Till then, you will not come down. I was sitting there, and I was so angry. There were charcoals, bags of charcoals. I took those charcoals, and I started drawing it on the walls. The entire huge big room full of tuna wall, I was drawing. And after 2 hours, she opened the door and just saw that the entire wall had changed. I was crying and I was still rubbing charcoal and doing all that. After that, she never locked me, And this was the kind of relationship between me and her. And I never realized her importance till we came to Bangalore, All through, she was very, very strict with me. My father was exactly opposite. He used to buy books for me, tell stories, and I had read almost all the literature by my high school. And I studied in a convent school where speaking Kannada was punished. You had to pay 10 paise, and I would collect that 10 paise also. I never spoke Kannada. And till 6th standard, we did not have any Kannada. And there was moral science. If you pass in moral science, you would be passed in Kannada. But when I entered the 8th standard, the government made Kannada as the first language and compulsory subject. It was so difficult, and I had failed in the first test. I had got 13 marks. And I didn't realize it. The teacher came and told me, you have failed. I giggled, and he said, get signature of your mother. And after I went home, it hit me that I have failed. Because I was trained in such a way that I had to get within 3 ranks. Otherwise, otherwise there was no other go. So I had failed in Kannada. And then the teacher was very good. He said, read. then I challenged him and said that I will pass in Kannada. And I started reading. I would read aloud, loudly I would read. And I'm so I'm interested in sound. So I would recite everything. There was a Ganapati temple near the house. 5 o'clock in the morning, they would start with Suprabhata. So I would recite the entire Suprabhata. I knew what comes after what comes, everything I knew. I would recite. But what I would do is, I would walk like this. Kamala, kucha, chuchuka, kunkuma, toniya, taruni, tatula, neelatano. I would enjoy that beats. And a lot of music in the house. This went on. And amidst all kinds of restrictions, Amma had struggled hard to acquire education and become an independent woman. She studied in Bangalore Medical College. And Amma used to tell me how difficult it was for her to go to medical school wearing a 9-yard kache sari in a traditional way. She did not have a petticoat. They did not buy a petticoat for her because she had to wear, her mother-in-law told her that if you wear kache sari, only then you can go to the medical school. She had got the seat on her merit, but she said yes, and she would go to her friend's house, who is Philomena Curry, who was another very big doctor in Mangalore. We used to go and spend summer holidays with Philomena auntie. And Amma stole a dhoti of her father, and with a gunny thread, she would make a petticoat, change the sari, go to the college, come back, again change the sari, come home, take bath in the backyard, come inside. So all this she did. And then she got a job in Vanivilas Hospital. Then my father and mother decided to leave Bangalore, and they went to Shikaripura, a small town, and people from Sagara came and invited her that there are no lady doctors, and she started a clinic there. Even today, in many houses, my mother's photograph is in the puja house, puja ghar, and people love her. If I go there, I'm Dr. Magalu. I'm not Mamta, doctor's daughter. It was not like, we thoroughly enjoyed the reputation of being children of the well-known parents. So that I enjoyed. While at the same time, responsibilities of keeping up to the mark was a bit too high. I first disappointed my parents by failing to fulfill their dreams of me becoming a doctor. Then it was by opting to study Kannada literature. Like halfway through from English major, I went to the university and changed it to Kannada, and that was a bigger disappointment. Worst blow they had received was when I married an artist. And I did not listen to anyone. I just went, and our marriage was so beautiful. One of my friends had a Luna. People must be knowing what Luna is. Nowadays you don't see it. You can walk with the Luna faster. So she came in the morning and said, we are going out. And I went with her, got married, registered marriage, came home. And during tea, I just said, I got married. Nobody would listen to me, They were all very busy talking. And somebody said, shut up. This is not the time to make jokes. I said, no, I got married today morning. And the hell opened. And we had already seen a house to shift immediately. To our, the family that stayed in that house, the man broke his leg and they could not move out. So we didn't have a house. There was chaos in the world and everything was going wrong. And 3 lovely people, 2 of them my teachers, D.R. Nagaraj is one, who's no more, K. Marulusiddappa, who's a theatre critic, and Chandranath Acharya, who's an artist. See, all 3 of them signed for our wedding, and then I called DR and said, come now and take me from my house. He said, no, we are drinking. I said, 15 minutes. I put the phone. They were all there. And it's a lovely, memorable story, but it was terrible. It was scary. So we got married, and many a times my drifting away from the expected path you are supposed to take was understood as a threat to the reputation of the family, while it gradually sailed me towards another kind of reputation that allowed me to move towards my dream of becoming a writer. Reputation is imposed on us as individuals, reminding our responsibilities towards the reputation of one's family, located within a specific community, a religion, race, caste, gender identities. That too, if you are not a man, not from a privileged class caste, the whole notion of reputation gains power to control and direct your functioning. At least in the Indian context, reputation is rooted in the imagined tradition, history, and memory that have always been exclusive, not inclusive. This exclusiveness allows reinforcing the dominant practices of the high caste Hindus, which is usually Brahminical in India's case, but marginalizing the tribal, Dalit, women, gendered, and other minority communities. Resurfacing of the projected past, which will be present in the contemporary times, linger around deciding things for the other. Therefore, I would like to say, in India, past is an active political tool kept alive to reframe the notions of reputations in the present. People and the state refer to the tradition when the idea of reputation is invoked. A utopian state in India is imagined through the imagining of a perfect nation, the Rama Rajya, the kingdom of Rama. All men are expected to be like Lord Rama, and automatically all women are expected to be like Sita, the obedient wife, and therefore a good woman. The hierarchies maintained within the structure gets a royal consent. The pious Rama, in whose kingdom there was a peace and happiness and justice prevailed, is accompanied by brother Lakshmana, wife Sita, and Hanumanta, the monkey devotee. He strives for the well-being of his citizens. Rama Rajya, imagined by Gandhi, is completely different from the one being imagined in recent years. Now the popular portrayal of Rama is as a warrior. Then, whichever form one imagines Rama Rajya, it needs a Ravana, always identified as a demon king, and his sister Shurpanaka, who needs to be tamed and taught the lesson. Ambedkar, who drafted the Constitution of India and campaigned against the social discrimination against the Dalits, women, and labor, was extremely critical of the Hindu religion rooted in the caste system. He publicly burnt Manusmriti, which is in favor of high caste Hindus and mean towards the untouchable castes, recommending cruel punishments to them. Religion brought into politics establishes distance with other religious groups, keeping them insecure, and in turn, the moral values that are imposed in the name of religion controls members from within. As an individual and a writer from within and without the context, a tie between religion and politics, one has to face the challenges to contest the past if you have to deal with the reputation offered in the present. Reputation within the literary world is something one strives to attain as a writer. Nanjanagood Thirumalamba, 1887 to 1982, she is the first woman novelist, poet, critic, editor, and publisher in Kannada. She edited magazines for women in Kannada like Karnataka Nandini, Sanmarga Darshini, Veeramate. She wrote at least 80 poems between 1901 and 1902. They are compiled in the collections of poems titled as Bhakti Geetavali. In an interview given to C.N. Mangala, Thirumalamba has said that these poems were prayers pleading to God to show her the way and calm down the sadness of her heart, which was being subjected to an angry fate. Her first poem in the collection, written in 3 stanzas, Bharati Porayannanu, Bharati Protect Me, came out around 1902. 8 of her works were prescribed as textbooks for Madras, Mumbai and Mysore presidencies between 1918 and 1933. Tirumalamba's poems appeared in 3 anthologies: Bhadra Geetavali, 1916, Bhakti Geetavali, 1970, and Bhava Geetavali, posthumously published in 1988. She was against the confinement of women within the 4 walls of the house. Tirumalamba opposed child marriage, the torture of widows, dowry, and pretentious expenditure, especially at the weddings. Tirumalamba glorified the abilities of women and was responsible for generating a tremendous confidence in their strength. Love, affection, patience, and sacrifice were some of the very important qualities she talked about. These are the key qualities she gives to her protagonists. Nationalism is another area where contribution by women have to be noted. Tirumalamba has a number of poems that invoke the Kannada-ness, the Karnataka as a nation. These poems have women as the central character. The poet invites her brave sisters to come forward and stand by the country. She says that the women should bring freedom to the nation by encouraging their men to fight for the country and drive out the foreigners, the British. Tirumalamba strongly believed that women were more powerful than men in every way. She claimed in one of her articles that women were to be understood as saviors of men and society. Tirumalamba's defense for women's capabilities, intellectual power, and their right to the dignified life are remarkable. Masti Venkatesha Iyengar, an established writer, a novelist, and a critic in Kannada, who also got the Jnanapita later, reviewed novels written by Tirumalamba. Masti begins by defining what a novel is, and then moves on to prove how Tirumalamba's writings, both in structure and content, do not qualify as novels. He sarcastically comments on the author's intention of bringing in women's emancipation. Masti also raises questions regarding the portrayal of women protagonists in Tirumalamba's novels. He further points out how women characters do not cater to the do's and don'ts prescribed to them by the society, and therefore are artificial and lacking in noble behavior. He writes at length about the specific qualities of the ideal womanhood. The name of Nanjanagudu Tirumalamba, the first woman novelist, critic, editor and publisher in Kannada language in the 1920s, who advocated the woman's self and argued for a social space for women, did not get a mention in the Kannada literary history compiled in the 60s. Tirumalamba was brought back to light only in the 80s by the women's movement. The Dalit and women's movements of the 70s, with their social significance, have been powerful modern literary movements addressing issues around positioning of women, Dalits, and the minorities in the society and in literature. Here, I would like to mention another important writer from Kannada, Devanuru Mahadeva. I would like to consider him first as a writer and then as one who proposes his writing as Dalit activism. In South Africa, at the Durban Literary Festival, Mahadeva said, "Untouchability is the great-grandfather of apartheid." Mahadeva has been a hero for my generation of writers. Activism that links literature with the socio-political issues has opened up spaces for representing and contesting the past and the forms of reputations simultaneously, thus allowing one to redefine the allocated social status and move towards or away from the reputation floated by literary agencies, both state-sponsored and ones that function independently. Criticism is one such. A book can be ruined by either giving severe criticism or no criticism at all. Reputation depends on how and why one is identified, and your writing is judged with a prejudiced preconception restricting your expression to a limited mode alone. When my first book of poems, Kada Navilina Hejje, was published, a very well-known critic said that she does not write like a woman because there is no sound of bangles in her poetry, no fragrance of flowers in her poetry. Well, then I wrote back and responded to this kind of criticism, saying that I don't wear flowers, nor do I believe in traditions that wants me to wear flowers, bangles, or bindi, or look like someone who I don't want to be. And I have tried my best to get out of that since then, or all through. If I chose to call my engagement with my writing and life, identifying it with feminism and activism, I will be doing it as an extension of my engagement with my writing. When I'm identified and categorized as a woman writer, I am expected to be writing about and like the imagined woman who actually does not exist for me. And all other engagements of my writing remains unnoticed and unmentioned. Therefore, I would want to be called as a writer, as a poet, and I don't even believe in the word poetess. A carpenter doesn't have a carpentress. It is a work that you do. You sincerely work, edit, make a poem. Poem doesn't happen by itself by writing lines. It happens when you edit it. One of the poet friends used to tell me, because I take a long time to complete a poem, she would tell me, you should keep publishing if you have to be in the limelight. This limelight not only puts so much pressure on you to produce, but also threatens you about being forgotten by the readers. Along the imagination of a sacred space, reinterpretation of epics in the narratives, references to sexuality, which remains a taboo, calls for censorships and bans on books and individual writers. Most of the literary agencies, except those that are initiated by women writers or women activist groups, are owned by, run by, and the decisions within are taken by men who are mostly from the privileged social spaces. Literary platforms dominated by only men are treated as very natural, at least in Karnataka, and I know in most of the Indian languages and everywhere. Generally, any dais, except today's, most of the dais, for public meetings is usually filled with men. They don't even feel embarrassed looking at each other. All of them will be men, and only men. Men, always. Ha. If you are a woman and a writer, the measured reputation gets stretched doubly. Between the two forms of reputations, you need to break one to make the other. Within my poetic practice, I realize the need to deal with the so-called reputation, both as an individual and a poet. Poetry for me is a tool to question, argue, and put forth my ideas as an individual, joining hands with diverse voices of resistance. The literary reputation in India that are built, broken, and measured vary depending on religion, caste, and gender values attached to it. In Nigeria, I was asked to talk about my intentions of writing. I spoke of how people are aware of racism because Africa is a massive, big continent full of black people and who have moved out of that to different countries and argue for their identities, and they have been thoroughly misused right from slavery to apartheid. And I also said that at least because of that, people have heard about racism. People somewhere think that racism, it must be something bad, And, but people don't have idea about what caste system is. I said, in India, we thoroughly celebrate caste system and we follow it and we execute it and we see to it that it never goes away. And we have all the power to do that. The North American Black Panther movement has influenced the Indian Dalit literary movement. Racism, caste system, gender disparities, oppression and marginalizations due to religious, geographical or various other reasons needs to be addressed. Across all of these, it's women, their bodies, sexuality that remain vulnerable for all reasons and no reason at all. Women's bodies are punished, shamed, and raped to execute anger that is showcased during wars, while planning political strategies, controlling men and communities. The othered, including women, will voice for their rights whether you want it or not. It is those from the privileged mainstreams that need to learn and be aware of their limitations and privileges. Only feminist lenses, more inclusive and accommodative for diversity, can show a path to peace. This is what I believe. This is what I shared there. Therefore, it is important to imagine the concept of unity which can accommodate diversity. When a unity sans diversity is imagined, it leads to a political crisis or dictatorship. As writers, we have certain socio-political responsibilities. I believe in the feminist saying that personal is political. Writing itself is highly political. Our life and our writing can never be different, and it should not be different. We need to write the life that we live and live the life that we write. As a woman, a poet from the southern part of India, not writing in the dominant languages, but only in Kannada, the local provincial language, I use poetry as a tool of expression to speak my political stances and perceive unity through accepting diversities. Thanks to the World Organization of Writers for opting to give me the prestigious award, even after I said that they were Eurocentric. And when a friend from Congo insisted that French language has to be included, I said they will include French, but they will never include Africans. They will bring the whites from the French. So there were a lot of discussions which led to the award. There were 5 speeches that we gave, and we met the politicians, we met the women groups, we met the university people, and we met general public. And beyond all this, all through, and as I stayed there for 8 days, all the 8 days, on the 8th day the award was given. It built up like I started learning so many things and seeing so many things which I never expected. The pain, the sorrow, the poverty, the helplessness, and the beauty, the falling in love, everything was happening simultaneously, and I could just feel that there. I'm more than happy as Nobel laureate Ol Soyinka was honored during this occasion. I made friends with young poets and writers who came there as volunteers, met many wonderful writers from Nigeria and other parts of the world, other parts of Africa and the world. I also got a chance to meet women groups, politicians, and academics from Nigeria. I listened to the personal and political stories that makes and mars the life of women and the youth in Nigeria. I could hear the fear that still lingers in their hearts. I said, you have got democracy now. We are struggling to retain democracy. It's important to realize what it is. We talked about the multilingualism, multicultural diversities, that we share and exchange stories. My visit to Nigeria will remain with me as one of the most precious memories. The dynamic of global literary industry is still engaged in looking at the East as exotic. Not enough regional language literature in good translation is available in English or any other global languages. Indian literature is understood mostly through what is accessible in English. So I got into translation as one other form of expression, one other form of getting engaged with society and identities. And I have been translating since past 30 years, and I've translated hundreds of contemporary poets whose poems would allow me to speak in my land, my socio-political realms. It gives me strength. And I run a group called Kavya Sanjay, which is where a lot of young poets come, and we read these poems, we present these poems, we perform these poems, we do poetry installations in public spaces, and we connect with communities, we connect with all kinds of people. I don't believe that literature or writing or poetry can happen only if you go to colleges, schools, and learn and become a literature student. If you are privileged, you get that chance. Otherwise, experience can help you. You know, I did a workshop for the sex workers, and among 12 of them, only 2 could read and write, you know. And they helped others, and we did a huge long sari we took and they started, I told them that use this, write on that, do whatever you want. And one old woman, she said, I can't even get angry, you know. I don't have a space where I can get angry. I said, here is the space. And they made a huge, beautiful scroll with anger and love and sexuality and body on it and whatnot, you know. So poetry for me is not just a beautiful set of words. It is something that will allow me to change myself first and then try to connect with or understand others in this society. The translations are needed. So what I got into translations because translations will also help us introduce different kinds of powers of resistance within and without. That which is accessible is one that is validated by literary agencies like scholars, academics, and translators who mostly follow the tracks laid by the attitudes that are mostly conventional. So the translations that are available or in other languages, literature that is available for international spaces are very carefully designed so that it won't harm anyone, or sometimes, you know, which is controversial. So the digital space that engages with literature is much layered and cannot be seen in isolation since it is established with the influences and ideas that dominate the actual space. So even that is not very sincere. So to conclude, in India, literary reputation is a complex state to attain and is challenged with parallel definitions loaded with socio-political connotations of memories and amnesia. Thank you, SMI. Thank you, audience, who have stayed here for so long. I'm a poet, so you have to bear with me. I'll present 2 of my poems. So one is a tiny little poem. I'll read the translation. The second one, I have no translation. You have to listen to me in Kannada. Okay. Shabdagalu. Shabdagalu, shabdagalu, shabdagalu. Shabdagalu yatakke hige kappu tunturu hani hani. Hani hani shabdagalu tunturu hani shabdagalu. Shabdagalu yatakke hige kappu tunturu hani biliya avakashಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟ ರೂಪ ಶಬ್ದಗಳು ಶಬ್ದಗಳು ಯಾತಕ್ಕೆ ಹೀಗೆ ಶಬ್ದಗಳು ಕೇಳುವುದಿಲ್ಲ ಶಬ್ದಗಳು ಹೀಗೆ ಕೇಳುವುದಿಲ್ಲ ಶಬ್ದಗಳು ಕಾಣುತ್ತವೆ ಶಬ್ದಗಳು ಕೇಳುವುದಿಲ್ಲ ಕಾಣುತ್ತವೆ ಶಬ್ದಗಳು ಕಾಣದವು ಕೇಳುತ್ತಿವೆ. Words. Why are words like this? Black drizzly drop on a form of white space. Why are words like this? Visible but mute, the invisible heard. Now I would like to end with this poem. If you want to know what it is, you can ask me later. Okay. The language is the most dangerous thing, you know. When I found it very difficult to write poems as a woman poet, because poetry itself has a lot of metaphors which are assigned meanings. So when you bring in an image or a metaphor into a poem, it already has a meaning. It will also invoke the opposite of it. Binary oppositions play a major role in expression. So I'm a little tall now. I was a little smaller, shorter, and tiny, and I always thought people don't consider me seriously, so I would walk like this. And also, you know, as women, when they say that there is an ocean, we become the river. When they say there is a tree, we become the creeper. When they say some shit, we become another shit. So I wanted to change the metaphor. I didn't want the binary opposition. So this poem has two people falling in love. One is the ocean, that's a woman, who falls in love with her partner, who is music. The ocean and the music can never meet each other. This is all about both of them trying to fall in love, touch each other, but they cannot. So beyond this, I can't tell you. I'll ruin my poem. Okay. Pia pia, pihu pihu. Tola tumba, kadala tumbikondu, jigida, pritiya alakke. Ale, ale, layata ಹೊಸ ರಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಕಡಲು ಮುಳುಗಿ ಕಡಲಲ್ಲಿ ಸೂರ್ಯ ಮುಳುಗಿ ಚಂದ್ರ ತಾರೆಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಮುಳುಗಿ ಮುಳುಗಿ ಮೋಡಗಳು ಒಂದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಡಿಕ್ಕಿ ಹೊಡೆದು ಕಡಲೊಡಲಲ್ಲಿ ಗುಡು ಗುಡು ಗುಡುಗು ಸಿಡಿ ಸಿಡಿ ಸಿಡಿಲು ಕಡಲ ಮೈ ಮಿಂಚು. ಕಡಲಲ್ಲಿ ಸೂರ್ಯ ಚಂದ್ರ ತಾರೆಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಕಡಲಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಳುಗಿ ಮೋಡಗಳು ಮುಳುಗಿ ಕಡಲಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಡಿಕ್ಕಿ ಹೊಡೆಲು ಕಡಲೊಡಲಲ್ಲಿ ಗುಡು ಗುಡು ಗುಡುಗು ಸಿಡಿ ಸಿಡಿ ಸಿಡಿಲು ಕಡಲೊಡಲಲ್ಲಿ ಮಿಂಚು ಕಡಲ ಮೈ ಮಿಂಚು. ಕೈ ಬೀಸಿ ಜಟೆ ಕೆದರಿ ಹೋ ಎಂದು ನಭೋ ಮಂಡಲದ ತುಂಬ ಹಾಡ ಚೆಲ್ಲಿದವನ ಜಗದಗಲ ಮುಗಿಲಗಲ ಹೊರಟು ನಿಂತವನ ಬಳಸಿ ತಬ್ಬಿತು ಜಗ ಮುಗಿಲನ್ನೇ ತಬ್ಬಿದ ಹಾಗೆ ಕಡಲು ಕಣ್ಣ ತುಂಬ ಕಡಲ ತುಂಬಿಕೊಂಡು ಕಣ್ಣ ತುಂಬ ಕಡಲ ತುಂಬಿಕೊಂಡು ಬೊಗಸೆ ತುಂಬ ಪ್ರೀತಿ ತುಂಬಿಕೊಂಡು ಮೊರ ರೂಮ್ ರೂಮ್ ಸುರದೇತ್ ಹೇ ಬಾಜತ್ ನಾಮ ತಿಹಾರ್ ರೋಮ ರೋಮ ರಾಗ ನುಡಿಸಿದ ಹಾಗೆ ಹಾಗೆ ರೋಮ ರೋಮ ರಾಗ ನುಡಿಸಿದ ಹಾಗೆ ಕಡಲಿಗೆ ತುಟಿ ಇಟ್ಟ ಆವರಿಸಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟ ಕತ್ತಲಲ್ಲಿ ಕತ್ತಲ ಚೆಲ್ಲಿ ಕಡಲೊಡಲಲ್ಲಿ ಗುಡು ಗುಡು ಗುಡುಗು ಸಿಡಿ ಸಿಡಿ ಸಿಡಿಲು ಕಡಲ ಮೈ ಮಿಂಚು ಮಿಂಚು ಮಿಂಚು. ಕಲಕಿ ಕಡಲ ಕನಸು ಕಲಕಿ ಕಡಲ ಕನಸು ಪಿಯಾ ಪಿಯಾ ಪಿಹು ಪಿಹು ಅಳುತ್ತಿತ್ತು ಮನಸ್ಸು. ಕಲಕಿ ಕಡಲ ಕನಸು ಪಿಯಾ ಪಿಯಾ ಪಿಹು ಪಿಹು ಅಳುತ್ತಿತ್ತು ಮನಸ್ಸು. ಹುಣ್ಣಿಮೆಯ ರಾತ್ರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಗಗಳ ಹೆಕ್ಕಿ ಹೆಕ್ಕಿ ಅಲೆ ಅಲೆ ಉಮ್ಮಳಿಸಿ ಬಿಕ್ಕಿ ಬಿಕ್ಕಿ ರೋಧಿಸಿತು ಕಡಲು. ರಾಗಗಳ ಹೆಕ್ಕಿ ಹೆಕ್ಕಿ ಉಮ್ಮಳಿಸಿ ಬಿಕ್ಕಿ ಬಿಕ್ಕಿ ಹುಣ್ಣಿಮೆಯ ರಾತ್ರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ರೋಧಿಸಿತು ಕಡಲು. ನಿದ್ದೆ ನಿದ್ದೆ ಇಲ್ಲ ನಿದ್ದೆ ಇಲ್ಲದ ನಿದ್ದೆ ಇಲ್ಲದ ಮುಗಿಲ ಕಣ್ಣು ಕೆಂಪು. ನಿದ್ದೆ ಇಲ್ಲದ ಮುಗಿಲ ಕಣ್ಣು ಕೆಂಪು. ಸುಡು ಸುಡು ಸೂರ್ಯ ಒಡೆದೊಡೆದು ಚೂರು ಚೂರು ಚಂದ್ರ ಕರಗಿ 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 ಹರಿದು ಕಡಲ ತುಂಬೆಲ್ಲ ನೀರು ಕಣ್ಣೀರು. ತೋಳ ತುಂಬ ಕಡಲ ತುಂಬಿಕೊಂಡು ಜಿಗಿದ ಪ್ರೀತಿಯ ಆಳಕ್ಕೆ ಆಲೆ ಆಲೆ ಲಯ ತಪ್ಪಿ ಹೊಸ ರಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಕಡಲು ಮುಳುಗಿ ಕಡಲಲ್ಲಿ ಸೂರ್ಯ ಮುಳುಗಿ ಚಂದ್ರ ತಾರೆಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಮುಳುಗಿ ಮುಳುಗಿ ಮೋಡಗಳು ಒಂದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಡಿಕ್ಕಿ ಹೊಡೆದು ಕಡಲೊಡಲಲ್ಲಿ ಗುಡುಗುಡು ಗುಡುಗು ಸಿಡಿ ಸಿಡಿ ಸಿಡಿಲು ಕಡಲ ಕಡಲ ಕಲಕಿ ಕಡಲ ಕನಸು ಪಿಯಾ ಪಿಯಾ ಪಿಹು ಪಿಹು ಅಳುತ್ತಿತ್ತು ಮನಸ್ಸು. ಕಡಲ ತುಂಬ ನೀರು, ಕಡಲ ತುಂಬ ನೀರು ಕಣ್ಣೀರು. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Yeah. We have about 10 minutes. You can ask.
Maybe you can respond, if not questions, you know.
Poem that you recited in Kannada, like, haven't you translated that in English? Or I know translations lose a lot, but the rhythm, the chand that was there, that's so amazing. I'm really, like, even if you have a little bit in English, it would be really nice.
English is a language that can't hold all of this. But, you know, it got translated into Italian beautifully, you know. My poems are translated into Italian. The Italian translated, and me, we sat for around 3 months to do this. And he has done it so beautifully, and it sounds like this. And me and him together performed this poem in Italy. So it's very difficult to translate into English. Because of I also play with the sound and the music of the language, innate to the language. Yeah.
That's true of Bengali also.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Me asking a question. So, what has been your experience of reading your poems in Nigeria? You were talking about experiences of talking to women there, especially. Do you want to share a couple of thoughts about that?
It's wherever I go, if somebody asks me that they want to publish my poem, I request them that, why don't you publish Kannada next to whatever language you want to publish. So many international publications has carried my original Kannada poem with that. I do that. In Nigeria, you know, like Nigeria, it was like they liked my recitation because they don't have that tradition of playing with the sound and performance. Performance is there, but they don't do the way I do, you know. So, and I for every session, I chose to perform and recite different set of poems. Like there is one poem called Amulet in English translation, which I usually perform. So when my son was really small, we were in Hyderabad, and he would always ask me to tell stories. So, and he would tell stories from your childhood. Because I grew up in a forest area. There was no trees in Hyderabad where we lived. You know, so he would ask me, and when I started telling him stories, before I complete, he would sleep. He never listened to the complete story at all. So I wrote a poem about that, and I also wrote about how lies and stories are similar, and how truth becomes lies, and lies become so favorite, and how the lands are like it's kind of like the Malnad is being destructed, and so it was all about that. So what I do is I make an amulet. I'm a non-believer, but I perform this. So, and with the amulet, what I do is I put lines of my poems in the amulet. And I believe that for me, everything is poetry, you know. These lines are much better than the name of gods. You know, the lines of poetry in the amulet and I gift it to people, you know. So that performance I did for the young people there. And I said that it is what you believe in, you know. You have to believe in to live that. Once you start believing in something, believing in love and believe against violence and hatred, you can make it. At least you can make lines out of it. You know, some kind of a thing, you know. And when I met women, there were stories which were really horror stories that I heard from people, and I presented a series of poems about body, sexuality, and I also recited Akka Mahadevi and other Vachana poets from India, like Sule Sankave, who's, and I also said that, see, the 12th century allowed people to imagine their own God. So a prostitute could imagine the Nirlajja Ishvara, Ishvara without Lajja, to Akka Mahadevi, who imagined the Channamallikarjuna, the most handsome one. So this range of gods that you can fall in love, actually it's the love in the form of God. So these were the things I brought in, and I like kind of mixed vachanas with my poems, and I performed lines from, controversial lines from Vachana, women Vachanakaras, which talks about body, sexuality, and where it says, you know, like bodies, like Mahadevi Akka, she goes naked. And when she comes to Alamba Prabhu, she's covered herself with the hair, the long hair. He will say that, you say that you don't care about the body, but how come you are covering this? And she will say that, because I didn't want to hurt men like you, you know, because, and I said that body is, you know, is something that women should not, which is always shamed, which is always ill-treated, which is always targeted, which is always like used. And I said, you know, women should not take all these assumptions of patriarchal assumptions of the woman's body. And I was trying to build the whole poetic notion around that, which I did, which was really, really successful, you know. And also, you know, most of the times I was doing it in Kannada. And I was going to them, going into the audience and hugging them and bringing them and asking them to recite with me. And so the whole performance now, you know, for example, performance allows you to whisper your politics and idea into somebody's heart without the language, which happened in Nigeria. You know, I had, like when they announced my name, I was telling you, it took me a few seconds to realize that I have got the award, because the previous day I had spoken controversially and questioned them and all that. And it was all of them. They jumped, they came and they hugged me, they lifted me, and when I went on the dais stage, I could see them dancing. All women and young people, you know. So poetry was not just poetry in Nigeria or anywhere else, of course. You know, poetry was connection, poetry was empathy, poetry was sharing that, the fear that they had, and asking them not to worry, and asking them, supporting them to speak. And poetry was something which said that, what can men do? They can only gang rape. Beyond that, they can't do anything to your body. You know? So it was very difficult for me, especially with the women there, with their stories. But, you know, somehow poetry helped me to deal with that. Yeah.
Where you speak in this empathetic way, where poetry becomes some otherworldly access, you know, to lives and memories well beyond our conscious, our here and now consciousness. That said, what makes me curious is, in this world, however, the colonial project which has made English the currency of international presence or even reaching out to each other is a foregone conclusion. How does one release this sense of legacy or inheritance from its regional confines, whether it be in Nigeria or this land here in Karnataka, without having to go through English? When Daisy Rockwell translates something that wins the Booker Prize and the whole world celebrates it, it's a moment of great pride for us, no doubt. But it couldn't have happened without Daisy having translated it in English. And we know how we all have our positions of how English will have a reductionist impact on a certain regional expression or another, and so on, and we are fighting to preserve that, you know. And that may or may not be true to an extent between Kannada and Italian, for example, and so on. But these relativities exist, and there is English, which in one measure has allowed us to take some leaps and build bridges on another. It has also built its own politics of, like you said, what gets recorded and remembered, and what has to be, you know, what we might have to let go of. Yeah.
I translate into English. Only thing I have problem with the whole translation system is people in India particularly, or maybe everywhere else, they think if you know the language you can translate, which is wrong. If I can speak English, I cannot translate. If I can speak Kannada, I strongly believe, and this has happened to me, only poets can do justice to translating poetry. You know, I translated, somehow I never work with prose, but I translated Elif Shafak's 40 Rules of Love into Kannada, which got me the award. But the whole novel is so poetic. It's so beautiful. That is one thing. The other thing is, again, there was one question by one of the politicians in Nigeria, and they said that in Nigeria, English is the main, everybody speaks English. So he said, all our materialistic world is coming from America. We have left-hand driven cars and all intellectual inputs are from England. So we are confused which one to use. So I said, our chutney has gone into the dictionaries, you know. Like, they have Igbo, they have Europa, they have wonderful languages, which I said, use English because it's needed for business. Communication. It should be a communicative language, you know. And writers who write in English should be one other writer in the country who cannot write in Igbo or cannot write in Kannada or cannot write in Europe or Tamil or whatever. And it's important to understand how to deal with English. And also, you know, when you asked, I strongly believe, I don't know, somehow I have become internationally known. I don't know how it happened, but it happened. I have worked for it, okay? So, but, you know, now the Kavya Sanjay that I run, we have young poets coming from all different languages coming in. They're all friends now. You know, they translate each other, they go for chai with each other, they talk about poetry with each other, they come and like they jam with two different poems. See, poetry is, if you introduce it as a serious, it is very serious beyond being academic alone. You should teach the nuances of poetry. Like, you know, when we were in college, I had a friend. I was in Kannada department doing comparative literature. She was in the English department. She was a ranked student. When we were having lunch, I started reciting Kamala Kucha Chuchuka Kunkumato Niyata Arunida Tulani Latano. I said, so beautiful, you know. And also I was reciting Shankaracharya's Saundarya Lahari. And I said, if Shankaracharya, he died so young, and he's such a wonderful poet, and his imagination of subtlety, love, and the body of a woman, no one else can imagine. But there are stories. Then I also recited a particular poem which talks about the line of hair from Nabhi that goes down. He talks, and everywhere he adds Mata. I said, if he had not added Mata, they would have killed him. You know, he had to. Or it's okay. That's not the issue. The beautiful way of weaving a poem is most important. She stopped talking to me. You know, she said, I should not do this. See, this whole training that we get about how to approach something itself is wrong. The whole system is wrong. You know, it's beautiful poetry. Ramayana is such a nice, there are hundreds of Ramayanas. Mahabharatas, like all Kannada Mahabharatas are by Jaina poets, Pamparanna and all of them. Everywhere, because the Dravidian becomes the important there. So Ravana is brilliant. You fall in love with Ravana. He is not a demon. See, we have been resisting all through, all over. Why don't we understand that? This diversity is something which literature can open up, poetry can open up. But somehow the training that we receive and the way our mind is tuned, now suddenly English came. So English is something which will allow us to get our final, whatever, okay? But it's not that. English is so limited. There are wonderful writers in English, I'm not saying that. But there are amazing writers in other languages. And it's important to identify the translator and get things done. That is still happening in Kannada. Now we have a small group where we are trying to do this. I don't know if I answered you or not. I don't know, I just went off somewhere. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.